to the Argaux Wine 101 Where to Start Guide. I'm Alyssa, Head of Customer Experience and Wine Education here at Argaux, and I am so excited to introduce you guys to our newest platform that we have designed specifically for our customers in mind. The world of wine is confusing and it's super hard to navigate, so we are here to help. Whether you've already had a little bit of training or you are starting from scratch, this simple guide will help you understand the basics. I won't bore you with too much on the history of wine, but it dates back hundreds of thousands of years. Think BC era, if not longer. However, it always boils down to grapes being cultivated in the vineyards, harvested at their peak, and then fermented for several months to even years. The type of grape, where it's grown, the growing season, the climate, winemaking, all of these factors will contribute to the flavors that you find in your glass. You've maybe heard of the term sommelier. Sommeliers are experts that study wine on a deeper, more complex level. Some sommeliers can distinguish hundreds of grape varieties with just a sip. But my friends, you don't need to be an expert to pick out a bottle that you love. Your taste buds are all your own, and with just a little bit of wine knowledge, you'll have everything you need to pick and enjoy a bottle. To assist on your journey into the world of wine, we've actually created our Wine 101 tasting kit for beginners. This kit has a similar approach to our wine tasting kit, and we've created them to encourage those who are looking to start their journey into the world of wine. Because the absolute best way to learn about and enjoy wine is, of course, to taste it and to try new things. Now, there's a few topics we need to cover. One, old world versus new world. Old world is anywhere in Europe, and new world is anywhere outside of Europe. South Africa, South America, the United States, you name it, but just think outside of Europe. Generally, you'll see wines divided into these two broader categories, and every region comes with its own unique palette of flavors and characteristics. European winemaking tends to stay very traditional, and oftentimes you'll see many of those wines labeled after the region itself. New World winemaking can break the barriers a little bit in the best way possible. Each and every region, though, brings its own unique flavor palette and characteristics. Next up, wine styles and vintages. For the sake of this, we're going to talk about just the main wine styles. So white wine, rosé wine, and red wine. Of course, there's also sparkling, and even now, something that we see, orange wine. White wine comes from white grapes, or really, they're kind of more like green in color, and when they ripen, they turn yellow. Rosé wine comes from red grapes, but can be made in a wide range of styles, which will ultimately affect the color. And red wine, of course, comes from red grapes. Now, when we look at red wine, the other thing to consider here is lighter red wines versus darker red wines. And oftentimes, that will give us an indication of the grape variety and how thick or how thin the skins are of the grape itself. So something like Pinot Noir is very thin-skinned, generally lighter in color, versus something like Cabernet Sauvignon. Another grape, equally as popular, thicker-skinned, generally darker in color. Also, a darker berry. The vintage of wine that you may see on a label is just the year indicated of when the grapes were harvested. And wines can taste different from one year to the next because of the growing season. And not every single growing season is exactly the same. All right, let's get into some wine tasting tips. I am ready to sip on a glass of wine. Now, one thing that can separate a sommelier from a novice drinker is how they observe the wine. Because observing the wine is easily the most important aspect. However, learning to observe a wine is kind of awkward and a little bit tricky because most of us don't generally observe wines, we just drink it, which is okay too. Wine tasting is observing, and it's a mindfulness, and it will help you become a better taster if that's what you desire to achieve. It may also affect other aspects of your life, like changing the desire of what you like to eat. The main thing we need to remember here though is anyone can wine taste. Anyone, I mean it. All you need is a glass of wine and to use your noggin. As we go about our tasting tips, there are 4 basic steps that we're gonna cover. Look, smell, taste, and observe or conclude. And while we do this, let's open some juice, shall we? Our first step, looking at the wine, is a visual inspection of observing the wine under neutral lighting, holding over something white, anything with a neutral background that will help you determine the color a little bit easier. And as we look, some important tools to sort of take away is hold your glass at about a 40-45 degree angle and just move it around. See if you can evaluate the differences in color. But this is really just our first introduction to what we might be sipping on. Our second step, which is smelling, is identifying aromas through our olfactory sensations, our nose. And you can breathe in through your nose. Make sure you give your glass a few good swirls though. We want to get oxygen in contact with our wine to help release those aromas out. Don't be scared to get your nose all the way in there. Our third step, taste, my favorite, is going to be assessing the structure of the wine. And what we want to do as we taste is try to coat our mouths from front to back. We want to be able to pick up on not only the flavors, but of course the structure of these wines. Does it have good acidity, the mouth-watering effect? Does it have a tannin structure? Is it mouth drying? What is the body? What's the texture? Is it sour? Is it sweet? So all of these characteristics are going to help us figure out general characteristics of the grape varieties that we're sipping on, and also likely regional aspects as well. Now, I have to take a sip, of course. Delicious, you guys. Now, last step, conclude an observation. Okay, again, probably the most important aspect of tasting. And when we get to this step, we want to have an idea of the complete profile of the wine we're sipping on in our head for our short-term memory. As we conclude though, and we've assessed the wine and the structure and the flavors, the most important thing is to ask yourself, did I like this wine? And maybe why or why not? Both are equally as important. Now, I'm not trying to leave you hanging, I promise, but we do break down all the tips and tricks and guide you with specific flavors and what to look for and how to evaluate in our new tasting kits. Additionally, and what's really cool is all of our new tasting kits, particularly for the Wine 101 Beginner's Guide, are based around popular and common grape varieties like Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Cabernet Sauvignon, all from different regions and each unique in their own style for you to taste at home for yourself. And as promised, each kit comes with its own guide for all the resources you could possibly need, making wine easy to understand. Here at Argaux, wine is about food and bringing people together around a table. It's about relationships and honest conversation. And this is the same way we like to take an approach with how we source our wines. Because when it comes to choosing eco-conscious wines, the lines can get a little blurry. And we're all searching for the right answers. But the vineyard can lay the groundwork for responsible farming and clean winemaking. So we pride ourselves in finding wines that are not so average. But our ultimate goal, always for our consumers, is to source these hidden gem wines that we think are worth exploring. Make sure to visit our website, particularly the Wine 101 webpage, that breaks down further questions and answers for all the basics around wine. You can be assured that we've broken down every topic for you. Thank you so much for joining me. We can't wait to open your eyes, your heart, and your taste buds to the world of wine. Happy tasting!